3 weeks back, I observed something within a dataset that I nearly scrolled right past. A specific figure within the Shanghai Futures Exchange Vault report had shifted, not by a marginal amount, but by a dramatic one. Consequently, I launched a spreadsheet and commenced monitoring it daily, then weekly. What I uncovered dragged me down a research rabbit hole from which I have yet to emerge. If you possess physical silver, if you hold shares in mining companies, if you've observed the price plummet and questioned whether you made a grave error, or if something far more significant is unfolding, this video will address that query. I will guide you through my discoveries precisely in the sequence I made them, allowing you to witness what I witnessed, and roughly around the 12-minute mark of this presentation, you will encounter a specific piece of information that will compel you to hit pause and rewind. I am certain of this because that was my exact reaction. It all commenced with a single graph. Welcome to the concealed economy. If this examination reveals something the mainstream overlooked, please press like and subscribe. It assists the algorithm in presenting this to those who require this insight. The Shanghai Futures Exchange, known as the SHFE, releases its vault inventory statistics. This is not conjecture, this is not interpretation, it is not an online commentator making estimates. This is the exchange itself, disclosing the exact tonnage of tangible silver residing within its storage facilities. Authentic bars, genuine vaults, audited figures updated each day. I accessed CEIC, one of the planet's most esteemed economic data platforms, and extracted the chronological series. Around mid-December 2025, the SHFE documented roughly 900 tons of physical silver in its vaults. The figure I observed on February 4th was 423 tons. I stared at the screen. I refreshed the page. The number remained identical, so I retrieved the data from the prior day, 449 tons. The day before that, 462 tons. The day preceding that was higher still. I continued backtracking day after day after day. Every single data point was lower than its predecessor. Not on most days, not on average. Every single day. The inventory number diminished. I extracted 6 weeks of data and could not locate a single 24-hour period where the inventory expanded. That is not a minor fluctuation. That is not a seasonal variation. That constitutes a one-way exit. Silver is departing those vaults and it is not returning. Permit me to ensure you genuinely comprehend the magnitude of what I am illustrating, because statistics devoid of context are merely noise, a drop from 900 tons to 423 tons within 7 weeks. That represents a 54% withdrawal. Over half of the primary Chinese exchange's silver inventory evaporated in under 2 months. The weekly withdrawal pace is 42.6 tons. The daily drain equates to 10.78 tons. And if you examine the chart's trajectory, the slope of the decline is intensifying, not moderating. The drain is speeding up. Now, position this within a global framework. Combine the SHFE vaults with the Shanghai Gold Exchange vaults, and you arrive at approximately 900 tons total across all Chinese exchange-accessible silver. That equals 29 million troy ounces. It sounds substantial until you recognize that worldwide consumption surpasses 1.2 billion ounces of silver annually. All of China's exchange silver represents merely 2.4% of a single year's global demand. 2.4%. That is not a safety buffer. That is the residual vapor in the tank. At this point, I will undertake an exercise that none of the articles covering this data attempted. I will project the mathematics forward. If the withdrawal velocity persists at 42 tons weekly, and the present inventory stands at roughly 412 tons, according to the most recent refined terminal data, then you divide 412 by 42, yielding 9.8 weeks, essentially 10. Within 10 weeks at the present rate, SHFE silver vaults reach zero. Not low levels, not an alarming state. Zero. Vacant shelves, nothing remaining to fulfill futures contract deliveries. Now, if you are currently holding physical silver or silver mining equities and you just endured a 53% price collapse, I need you to grasp what this statistic signifies for your position. The exchange that substantiates and halts a massive segment of Asian silver price discovery is depleting its metal. I am not forecasting this will occur. Drain rates can alter, metal can flow back inward, but the fact that no one in mainstream financial media is even performing this calculation speaks volumes about the caliber of coverage you receive elsewhere. Here is where my investigation took its initial unforeseen detour. I sought to determine if this was solely a China narrative. Perhaps Chinese industry is withdrawing metal for solar panels and electronics, and this is unrelated to any broader dynamic. That would be logical. China is the globe's foremost consumer of industrial silver. Mystery solved, correct? So I retrieved the COMEX data and my stomach sank. COMEX is the principal silver futures exchange in the United States, operated by the CME Group. It is where paper silver contracts are traded and where, theoretically, one can demand physical delivery. According to information reported by the Kobe letter and verified by multiple sources, COMEX silver inventory diminished to 415 million ounces by late January 2026. That marks the lowest level since March 2025, a drawdown of 34 million ounces from its recent peak. However, here's what truly seized my focus. According to meticulous analysis from SHFE, the registered silver on COMEX, registered denoting metal officially designated and available for delivery against futures contracts, has experienced significant outflows since September 2025. Eligible metal, which is silver stored in COMEX-approved warehouses but not yet allocated for delivery, is being recategorized as registered merely to satisfy the demand from parties standing for delivery. And here is the pivotal element. The exchange is not introducing new metal. No fresh silver is entering the vaults. They are simply reclassifying their existing stockpile. It is akin to a restaurant exhausting its food supply and relabeling the appetizers as main courses. The menu appears complete, but the kitchen is barren. Thus, it is not exclusively China. COMEX is also draining. 2 of the 3 largest visible silver inventories on Earth are losing metal simultaneously. At that juncture in my research, I was hesitant to inspect the third, as I already intuited what I might find. I proceeded to the London Bullion Market Association data. The LBMA administers the most substantial physical precious metals market globally. And according to analysis released by AU Bullion Canada and multiple precious metals researchers, the LBMA's estimated free float, the silver actually accessible to settle London's massive unallocated accounts, has plummeted to what one source characterized as the lowest level in contemporary history. Per a detailed report on Trading Key for the inaugural time in modern history, all 3 major transparent silver inventories, Shanghai, COMEX, and London, are draining concurrently at record velocity. The report approximates that nearly 1 billion ounces of refined silver have disappeared from visible stockpiles since 2021. Now pause. I need you to hold these 3 facts together simultaneously. Shanghai is draining. COMEX is draining. London is draining. Identical direction, identical time frame, identical metal. No historical precedent exists for this phenomenon. If this were occurring with oil, it would headline every financial network worldwide. If this were happening with copper, congressional hearings would be scheduled by Friday. But this involves silver. Consequently, you are learning about it from me at midnight on YouTube instead of from the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And frankly, that too is part of the narrative. Thus, the subsequent inquiry is evident, and it is the one that fueled my research until 3:00 a.m. Who is extracting the metal? Because silver does not evaporate. It does not dissolve. When it departs an exchange vault, it relocates somewhere. An individual signed a delivery warrant. Someone coordinated armored transport. Some entity possesses those bars. And whichever party it is, they are executing this simultaneously across 3 continents. Allow me to disclose my findings on the COMEX front. I aim to be transparent regarding what constitutes verified data versus my own inference. On January 7, 2026, a single day of COMEX deliveries transferred 8.1 million ounces of physical silver. According to detailed analysis from the Jensen David Substack, JP Morgan delivered 99% of that total. One banking institution, 8 million ounces one day. But here's what astounded me. Following such a colossal delivery, one would anticipate demand to cool, contracts fulfilled, purchasers satisfied, open interest declining. That is the typical pattern for delivery months. Yet that is not what transpired. Open interest increased. New buyers were entering as rapidly as prior ones were receiving their metal. And according to analysis from Money Metals, an even stranger activity was occurring behind the scenes. Traders were rolling contracts backward, shifting March delivery positions into January and February. In conventional markets, participants roll forward to postpone delivery. Here, they were paying a premium to accelerate. They desired the metal sooner, not later. The most straightforward explanation is that they distrust its availability if they delay. One analyst quoted by Money Metals articulated bluntly, if this pattern persists, COMEX could encounter serious difficulties. Now, let me return you to China, because while the vaults were draining, another development was unfolding that alters the entire interpretation of the story. This is the segment where my perspective shifted from "this is intriguing" to "this is deliberate." On January 1st, 2026, China's Ministry of Commerce enacted new export controls on silver. I consulted the original MOFCOM announcement and cross-referenced it with CNBC's reporting. According to CNBC, the state-operated Securities Times cited an unnamed industry insider stating the new policy formally elevates silver from an ordinary commodity to a strategic material. Allow that terminology to resonate: strategic material. identical regulatory standing as rare earth metals, the same classification China employed to exert pressure over magnets and semiconductors. Under the revised regulations, only 44 major state-sanctioned enterprises that produce a minimum of 80 tons of silver annually and maintain $30 million in credit lines are authorized to export. Per analysis from FX Street, this effectively confines 60 to 70% of the world's refined silver supply to domestic Chinese utilization. Hundreds of smaller and mid-sized exporters who had supplied silver to global industrial consumers for decades were abruptly excluded overnight. Tesla CEO Elon Musk responded on his platform X by stating, "This is not good. Silver is needed in many industrial processes." According to CNBC, within days of the announcement, 2 Chinese companies contacted Canada-based Kuya Silver, proposing to purchase physical silver at 8 per ounce above the market price. An Indian buyer followed the subsequent day, offering $10 above market. That is how one recognizes a restriction is genuine, when purchasers begin contacting miners in other nations, offering premiums solely to secure metal. China did not prohibit silver exports. That would have been excessively overt. It executed a more potent maneuver. It engineered a licensing bottleneck so constricted that the majority of global silver refining capacity is now functionally landlocked within Chinese borders. Now, accompany me through this timeline, for this is where my investigation entirely altered course. I began correlating the vault data with the policy dates, and an unexpected pattern materialized. October 2025. China's combined SHFE and SGE vaults contained approximately 1,190 tons of silver. That was the baseline. By November 21st, merely 51 days later, those identical vaults held 519 tons. According to AUB's detailed analysis, 670,000 kilograms of silver vanished in under 2 months. That equals 21.55 million troy ounces. And here's the detail that remained with me. On November 21st alone, an additional 15,819 kilograms were withdrawn. The price of silver was declining that day, not rising, falling. Typically, when price drops, sellers emerge and buyers withdraw. Yet some entity was extracting more metal on a downward day. That is not speculative conduct. That is strategic accumulation by a party indifferent to daily price fluctuations because they operate on an entirely different timeline. Then an unusual event occurred in December. The SHFE experienced a 129-ton inflow, the highest monthly inflow in 17 months. It appeared the drain might be reversing. Some analysts expressed relief, but the reversal was temporary. By mid-January, the drain recommenced more aggressively than before, and it has persisted since. Here is my candid interpretation of this pattern, and I wish to be explicit. This is my connective reasoning, not a statement of confirmed fact. China replenished its exchange vaults briefly in December, immediately preceding the January 1st enactment of export controls. Metal flowed inward during December. Then the export portal sealed shut on January 1st, and now the metal is flowing outward again. But this time, it cannot exit the nation. It remains inside China. It is being transferred from exchange vaults, which are publicly visible, to an alternate location. Industrial facilities, governmental stockpiles, military reserves. We do not know precisely where, as that data is unpublished. But we know it is departing the exchange system, and we know it cannot leave the country. Some entity is relocating silver from the public ledger to a private one within a closed system. Concurrent with these events, the sole investment vehicle accessible to Chinese citizens seeking silver exposure was being systematically disabled. The UBS SDIC Silver Futures Fund is the exclusive publicly traded fund in China, investing directly in silver futures. I wish to pose a question before proceeding. Examine those 4 sequential steps: export controls, vault drains, fund lockouts, Western price crash. Do you believe that sequence is coincidental, or does it appear coordinated to you? Inform me in the comments, because what I will reveal next compelled me to choose a position. I wish to present a historical parallel that made this entire investigation coalesce for me. Patterns carry more weight than predictions. In 2005, China initiated stockpiling copper at a pace the world had never witnessed. Exchange vaults drained. Prices remained manageable. Western analysts were perplexed. Why was China acquiring so much copper? The answer became apparent within 18 months. China was constructing strategic reserves ahead of the most extensive infrastructure build-out in human history. They were purchasing all they could at every manageable price before their own demand rendered the metal prohibitively expensive. The copper price did not merely double, it tripled within approximately a year. By the time the remainder of the world comprehended China's strategy, it was too late. The metal was gone, the reserves were established, and the new price reflected a reality where China held the inventory and everyone else held futures contracts. Now, observe the events unfolding with silver in 2026 and inform me if the pattern does not appear identical. A. Vault drawdowns are accelerating. B. Export controls are locking refined supply within borders. C. Only 44 state-approved firms are permitted to export. D. Retail investors are obstructed from competing via fund suspensions. E. The paper price is being suppressed through a combination of margin hikes in the West and fund lockouts in the East. The playbook is the same, but the stakes are elevated because in 2005, copper was not simultaneously being designated a critical mineral by the United States, discussed for international price floors by 55 nations, and on the verge of being remonetized by the world's largest democracy. Silver encompasses all those factors, and the vaults are emptying more rapidly than coppers ever did. Now, allow me to provide the statistic that unifies this entire investigation. This is the segment I mentioned at the outset, the portion that made me pause and revisit my own notes. China's export controls took effect January 1st. At the current SHFE drain rate of 42 tons weekly, the vaults approach zero around mid-April. I verified that calculation thrice, mid-April. Subsequently, I examined something entirely unrelated. India's Reserve Bank has promulgated new regulations permitting silver to be utilized as formal bank collateral effective April 1, 2026. The inaugural remonetization of silver by a major economy since the 1800s, 1.44 billion people gaining access to silver as a monetary asset. I placed the two dates side by side. The week the Chinese vaults approach emptiness is the identical week India activates silver as money. I leaned back from my monitor and remained silent for approximately 5 minutes. I did not contrive that convergence. I did not selectively choose dates to craft a narrative. I projected a drain rate forward via calculator and inspected a regulatory calendar, and they aligned on the same week, April 2026. Chinese vaults nearing zero, Indian monetization commencing, the world's factory exhausting its visible silver at the precise instant the world's largest democracy informs its populace that silver is money. When I witnessed that, I comprehended this narrative transcends inventory data. This concerns a once-in-a-generation reconfiguration of who holds silver, in what form, and under whose governance. Now let me explain what this signifies if you are invested in silver, because data without implication is merely trivia. The paper price, the digit on your screen, the number that dismayed you at 57, is established by exchanges that are depleting the physical metal required to back those prices. SHFE approaching zero. COMEX registered inventory bleeding since September. LBMA free float at historic lows. When the physical supply vanishes, the paper price ceases to be a market price and becomes a fiction. And fictions cannot withstand contact with a delivery notice. The question every silver investor should presently be asking is not where is the price heading this week. It is what occurs to price discovery when the vaults underpinning it are vacant. Because that moment is not theoretical. It is 10 weeks distant on the SHFE front, and no one on mainstream financial television is even debating it. A statement from the AU Bullion Canada analysis has remained embedded in my mind since I read it. They wrote, and I paraphrase to honor their work, that when the final readily accessible bar exits the vault, the price discovery mechanism transitions from whatever the paper market can tolerate to whatever is required to extract the final ounce from private possession. Reread that. Whatever it takes. And each day, the quantity of bars between the present and that moment decreases. Shanghai possesses 412 tons and declining. COMEX registered inventory has been bleeding out since September. London's free float is at a level multiple analysts describe as the lowest in modern history. The 6-year structural deficit has not reversed, and the world's largest refiner has just welded the exit shut. The question is not whether the vaults will empty. At this trajectory, the question is which vault empties first. I wish to conclude with a query, not an answer, because I believe this audience is sufficiently intelligent to derive independent conclusions. I prefer to equip you with data rather than opinions. If you were a government, sovereign wealth fund, or state-linked industrial conglomerate, and you knew that silver had just been designated a critical mineral by the United States, discussed for international price floors by 55 nations at the State Department, and was about to be formally recognized as money by the world's largest democracy, and you also knew you had just confined 60-70% of global refined supply within your own borders, what would you be doing right now? Would you be selling? Or would you be discreetly transferring every bar within your reach from a public exchange vault into a private one, while the remainder of the world observes the paper price and believes the trade is obsolete? The vaults do not deceive. They publish the numbers daily, and each day the figure is smaller than its predecessor. Silver is not crashing because nobody desires it. Silver is crashing because a specific entity desires all of it, and they require the price sufficiently low to acquire it before the regulations transform. If you held firm through this crash, you are not mistaken. You are early to a contest the rest of the world has yet to recognize. The data supports your position. The vaults substantiate it. And in the subsequent video, I will demonstrate precisely what transpires when those vaults near zero and the paper market collides with physical reality. My discoveries will transform how you perceive the price displayed on your screen. I will continue monitoring. I will persist in tracking every vault report, every CEIC data point, every delivery notice. And when those vaults approach zero, I will be present to reveal the subsequent chapter. 10 weeks. The clock is ticking. This is not financial counsel. This is what the data indicates. Your actions with this information are your own determination.